Today, we are making something super fun and stylish, a handmade bag using a plastic mesh base and macrame cotton yarn. This project is perfect if you love texture, structure, and the satisfaction of creating something truly unique. I will walk you through each step from prepping the mesh to stitching it all together, so even if you've never tried this before, don't worry, you've totally got this. Ready? Let's jump right in and start crafting. First, I'm starting with a plastic mesh base. In another tutorial, someone asked me about the size of the little squares here. They are about 3 mm wide inside each box, as you can see here. If you'd like to get the exact same mesh, I will leave a link to the one I use from AliExpress. You can either buy it separately or as a full kit with all the components, which is super handy. Basically, we'll be folding the mesh like this, and that's how we will shape the base of the bag. Next, you will need some yarn. For this mesh size, I'm using YarnArt Macrame Cotton. It works perfectly. I've got two colors here, one is sparkly with a touch of lurex, and the other is a solid classic shade. The thickness is just slightly over 2 mm, which fits great with the size of the mesh openings. Feel free to mix and match colors depending on the vibe you want for your bag. Then I've got these large plastic needles. I don't really stress about the exact size. These usually come in a set with various sizes, so you can just try a few and see which one works best for you. As long as the needle fits through the mesh and works with your yarn, you're good to go. Sometimes you will even find these needles included in a set with a plastic mesh, so if you go that road, you've got everything you need ready to go. Super convenient, especially if you are just getting started with this type of project. When it's time to stitch the bag together, you'll definitely want to have some stitch markers on hand. They are super helpful for holding the bag in place while you sew all the edges. Trust me, it makes the whole process so much easier and neater. On the inside of the bag there will be some visible knots from the stitching, so we will want to cover those up nicely. That's where the lining comes in. You can use any fabric you like for the lining, whatever fits your style. I'll be using this dark blue satin, which adds a lovely smooth finish and a touch of elegance to the inside of the bag. And of course, to get everything cut properly, make sure you have a pair of sharp scissors ready. You will also need a pencil, fabric marker, or anything you can use to trace the shape of the bag onto your lining fabric. This will help you cut it out neatly and accurately. Then you will definitely need some pins to hold the lining in place against the mesh before stitching it down. I'll be also using a sewing needle and thread to securely attach the lining to the inside of the bag. Just something simple and strong enough to keep everything nice and neat. And finally, you will need some metal hardware depending on the style you want. A lot of these pieces actually come in ready-made kits, which makes it super easy if you're just starting out. For this bag, I'll be using a chin strap, these metal rings that I will securely attach to the mesh, and a magnetic clasp to keep the bag closed. I also have this little deer charm as a decorative option. Alright, that's everything we need, and let's get started. I'm so excited to show you how this comes together step by step. Let's make something beautiful. Okay, so I'm going for a stripe pattern where the green-blue yarn will cover 3 mesh squares, followed by 1 square of the sparkly lurex yarn. As you can see, the edges of the mesh are perfectly straight and they tend to wave a little, so I will keep the stripe pattern only in the inner section, and I will finish the edges later using a slightly different stitch. I will show you how when we get there. Okay, so I'm starting with this yarn, and I will cut a piece that's about 150 centimeters up to 2 meters long. Since we will be pulling it through the mesh squares, the yarn might start to wear down if it's too long. Plus, super long pieces are more likely to get tangled. Don't worry about joining yarns along the way, it's super easy to do. And since we are going to cover the backside with lining, no one will ever see the thread tails. So really, don't stress about it at all. Now, I will thread the yarn through my needle. And I start by inserting it into this mesh square right here. I pull it all the way down. Okay. I will leave a small tail here. Alright, now I'm going to pull the needle diagonally to the left. Like this. We are going to move one more square to the right, just like this. And again we stitch diagonally to the left, just like before. This keeps the pattern flowing nicely and gives us the clean, consistent diagonal look throughout the stripe. Okay, so I'm going for a stripe pattern where the green-blue yarn will cover 4 mesh squares followed by 1 square of the sparkly lurex yarn. Now we need to expand the pattern by 1 more square to the right so that it spans 4 squares in total. 1, 2, 3 and 4. I will insert the needle like this and once again stitch diagonally across the square to keep the pattern flowing smoothly. Okay, now the pattern is across 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, and from this point on we'll be working our way upward. So I go with my needle through this square just right above this one. And diagonally right here to this square, just right above this square. And we'll just keep repeating the same process all the way up to the top. It's super relaxing once you get into the rhythm and the pattern looks so beautiful as it builds. And if there's ever a spot that might be a little tricky or confusing, don't worry, I will always point it out for you. For example, right here I came across a section where the openings aren't perfect squares. They are slightly off in shape. But don't let that throw off you. Just treat it like any other squares and stitch right through it as usual. Nothing to stress about at all. Just keep going like this. The same thing applies here. Even though this opening is in perfect square and looks a bit larger or oddly shaped, just keep stitching through it like usual. It won't affect the final look, so don't overthink it. Just keep the rhythm going and trust the process. As you can see, I'm running out of yarn, so let me show you what to do next. I'll just flip the piece over to the back side and then slide the needle under a few of the stitches like this. If you want to be extra secure, you can also tie a small knot, just like this. To lock everything in place, quick and easy. And I can trim off the excess thread. I can also do this with this starting tail. I cut a new piece of yarn and I can continue normally. I simply pick up right where I left off and continue stitching. No stress, no mess, smooth progress. And since I'm getting close to the end of the row again, let me show you exactly how to finish it off smoothly. I'll just continue stitching diagonally, even though the stitch here will be a bit shorter. That's totally fine, just keep the direction consistent and it all look great in the end. Now it's time to switch colors, so I will start using the Lurex yarn next. I'm leaving the previous section just as it is and I will simply start a new thread from the beginning, just like before. Let's add some sparkle. Where's the beginning? Oh, okay. Oh, here's the beginning. Okay. I will cut a piece of this thread. I thread another needle. And I will start right here in the square next to the last one, keeping the pattern flowing smoothly as I switch to the new yarn. So I'm inserting the needle into the same square where I already have the turquoise yarn. By doing this, the new stitch connects seamlessly to the previous row and the pattern continues beautifully without any gaps. And from there, I will start building the row upward just like before, keeping the same diagonal stitch pattern so everything flows nicely. So I put my needle into this square right above the previous one and go diagonally with my needle like this. And again the same. And another diagonal stitch. And just like that, we'll keep going into the same way all the way up the row. Simple, repetitive, and super satisfying once you see the pattern coming together. So as you can see, I've now reached the end of the row, and now it's time to switch threads again. I will go back to the dark turquoise yarn. You can definitely start right from where you are, but I'm going to flip the piece around. And I will show you exactly how to insert the needle. I continue from there. Let's keep going. So I take my needle with turquoise yarn and I will also go over 4 squares. 1, 2, 3 and 4. I'm not changing the angle. I'll be stitching this row exactly the same way as the previous one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I will insert the needle right here into this square. And just keep the same diagonal flow going. Consistency is key. And I go diagonal like this. Into this square. And again diagonally. And to this square. and diagonally again. So this stripe is once again going to run across 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like before. And now I will start building the row upward from here, continuing the same stitch pattern. Let's keep going. Here's a useful little tip for you. If your yarn is too thin, or if you are using a different mesh with larger squares and the yarn just doesn't quite fill them nicely, you can simply double or even triple the yarn. This way the stitches will sit nicely in the squares and everything will look neat and full. It's an easy fix that makes a big difference in the final look. Alright, I've reached the end of the row again. I'm intentionally leaving the last row of squares empty. You can stitch all the way to the edge if you prefer, but I like to leave some space here for the finishing edge stitch I'll be doing later. Now I'm switching back to the brown yarn and continuing with the next stripe. Same process as before, just keeping that rhythm and building up the pattern row by row. Okay, so I insert the needle right here and go diagonally like this. And continue all the way up. To make the pattern symmetrical on both sides, here's how I'm planning it out. I will have 4 rows where the stripes go across 4 squares, like this. Then one center row where the stripe goes across just 3 squares. After that, I will do another 4 rows of 4 square stripes on the other side. And between each of those rows, I will add a line stitched with the brown lurex yarn. That's the sparkly accent that breaks up the sections and adds a nice visual rhythm to the design. So to keep everything nicely symmetrical, this dark turquoise stripe in the center will be 1 square narrower than the others. It will sit right in the middle and create a balanced mirrored look on both sides of the pattern. Super satisfying. Alright, as you can see, I've now reached the center of the pattern. I've got 4 turquoise stripes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4 brown stripes, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on one side. And now, right in the middle, I'm going to create 1 dark turquoise stripe that's 1 square narrower, so it will go across just 3 squares, 1, 2, and 3. Let me show you exactly how I do that. So I go with my needle right here, and diagonally to the left, to this square, and diagonally. And that's the full width of the center stripe, 1, 2, 3 squares. Now I will just continue stitching upward to complete the row, same as before. Then I will continue as usual. I will stitch a brown lurex row next, and after that I will basically repeat the same section again. That means 4 brown stripes and 4 wider dark turquoise stripes, just like the first half. This way the entire pattern will be perfectly symmetrical from left to right. And this is what it looks like now that the entire center section, the main pattern, is finished. You can see that this center stripe is a little bit narrower than the others. Now it's time to move on to the 2 side panels, and I will show you exactly how I work those next. Here you can see that this line marks the center of the side panel. So I'm going to add the same brown stripe right through the middle, just like I did in the main section. This will help keep the overall design consistent and nicely balanced. Okay, so I go with my needle right here. This is the center line. Don't forget to leave a tail, and I go diagonally like this. And continue all the way up. Here's another little tip you can use. If you don't want to weave the tail in later, you can simply hold it in place and stitch right over it on the back side as you go. It's an easy way to secure the thread as you work and saves you a bit of time at the end. So I just hold it like this and stitch over it. This is how it looks from the other side. And if you think that's just enough, you can cut off the excess. Now I'm going to flip it over to the back side. Gently pull the needle through. And leave a little tail here so I can weave it in later and secure everything neatly. Now I'm taking the dark turquoise yarn again and stitching diagonal stripes along each side, going all the way across the full width of the panel. It creates a nice framing effect that ties in beautifully with the center pattern. Okay, so I go with my needle right here and diagonally like this, and again to the next square to the left and diagonally to the right. To the left again, to the right, and to the left, and to the right. And we will continue just like this all the way up, covering the entire width of the side panel. In the corners, the diagonal stitching might not line up perfectly, and that's totally okay. Don't be afraid to insert your needle twice into the same opening if needed. Some of those holes are larger anyway, so there's plenty of space and it won't affect the look at all. Just go for it. So I go with my needle twice to the same hole, and here I'm going to the same hole again. This is how it looks. On the opposite side, I want the stitches to go in the opposite direction, so I'll be stitching like this instead. And I can start right here from the top corner, no problem at all. So I go with my needle right here and just mirror the look of this. Alright, now I have finished both sides panel symmetrically, and it's time to move on to the remaining edges. For these final edges, I won't be stitching diagonally. I'll be doing straight vertical stitches instead. It gives the piece a nice clean border. So I go through my needle underneath. And I will start here, go through the next square right down, and up through the next. Again, don't worry at all if you need to pass through the same hole more than once. That's totally fine. Just focus on making the stitches look neat and consistent. Do what works best to keep your edges clean and pretty. So I go with my needle through this opening again, through the same one. Don't worry about it at all. If you want the edge to look denser and more polished, you can absolutely go through each hole twice. It's no problem at all. And in fact, it can make the final result look even better and more refined. We will stitch the edges like this anywhere they're needed. That means here and here along the sides. Alright, as you can see, the edges are all done, and now it's time to move on to the lining. I'm going to take my lining fabric. I'm tracing the shape of the bag, but I'm making slightly larger than the actual size. That way I will have enough fabric to fold in the edges neatly when it's time to stitch the lining in place. Now I'm going to cut out the shape I just traced. And now I'm flipping the bag over so the wrong side is facing up. And I'm placing the lining fabric shiny side up, so the shiny part will be visible inside the bag. Then I will take a few pins and carefully pin the edges of the fabric in place before stitching it down. This helps everything stays aligned and smooth while sewing. While you are pinning the side edges, it's also a good time to attach these rings if your bag will have a chain or strap. You can sew them on later, so no worries if you forget, but if you want to make it easier, it's best to stitch them in place before adding the lining. Just a little tip to save you some effort. So I just do it now. Here's what it looks like now that the lining is fully pinned in place. Now I'm going to start stitching the lining to the inside of the bag. Don't worry if your stitches aren't absolutely perfect. We'll be covering the edge from the other side later, so it won't be visible at all. Just focus on securing it nicely. Okay, so I take my needle and a piece of thread. This is Eslon, I think. Yeah, it's Eslon, but you can use regular sewing thread, it doesn't matter. And I just sew the edges like this. And here's how it looks now that the lining is fully stitched in. Next, I'm taking these large plastic stitch markers and starting to shape the bag into its final form. I will fold it like this, just how I want it to look when it's finished, and pin everything in place, ready for stitching the sides together. This is how it looks. I'm thinking about whether to go with the brown yarn or the teal, but the more I look at it, I think the brown will look really beautifully here. It will give it a nice clean finish that matches the rest of the design perfectly. So I grab this brown. For stitching these edges, I'm going to use the longest piece of yarn I can comfortably work with, because at this stage, with the lining already in place, it becomes a bit trickier to weave in the thread later. So it's best to use a longer piece from the start to avoid unnecessary joints. Okay, I start with my needle, for example, in this corner. It doesn't matter where I start. Leave it there long enough to weave in later. And I'll be stitching both sides together like this, making sure to cover the edge of the plastic mesh completely. This gives the bag a much cleaner, more finished look and helps everything stays nicely secured. Alright, as you can see, the back side is now finished. And now it's time to move on to the front side. To get there, I'm simply going to stitch through between the lining and the plastic mesh, just like this, so I can smoothly bring the yarn over to the front without it showing on the outside. And I continue sewing the two sides together. I always like to point out spots that could potentially cause issues, just to help you avoid them. In this case, I won't be stitching all the way across this top section, like this, because doing that would narrow the opening of the bag too much, and it would be harder to get things in and out. So instead, I'm going to divide it up. I will stitch along one section like this, then go back and finish the front panel separately. It might leave a little bit of a gap or left here, but it's totally fine. It's all part of the plan. So I go with my stitching like this. This is how it looks. And I go with my needle right back. And now we'll continue with the front side, just like that. And do exactly the same with the other side. Alright, it's finished, and now I'll show you how to weave the threads in to finish it off. The seam is super secure and won't go anywhere, so there's no need to tie a knot. Just weave the thread through a few stitches on the inside and then snip off the excess. Alright, now the very last step is attaching the clasp. You can totally sew it on before adding the lining, if that works better for you. But honestly, it's still very doable at this stage. Personally, I like to do it right at the end, once everything is fully stitched together. That way I can make sure it lines up perfectly and sits exactly where I want. So I measure it and put it right here. And on the inside, I will just bend the metal with my hands to secure the clasp in place. I just bend it with my hands so it's super secure. One part is finished. I need to attach the other part of the clasp, so I need to go through the lining right here. I bend it with scissors or pliers, whatever you have, and I will cover this with this deer charm. I put it right in the middle. And that's it. Our bag is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I loved making it. It's always so satisfying to see a project come together from start to finish, especially one this stylish and fun. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new DIY tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, happy crafting, and I will see you in the next one.